Good afternoon, everyone. Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. Speak back to me, please. It's much better, much better. Today is a huge, big day in the lives of changing our children's lives for the better, and some might call it a celebration, and others would say finally. So it's my pleasure to come before you this afternoon along with the leader of our city, Mayor Jim Kenney, for what really is a monumental, almost 10-year journey with regards to this legislative initiative. I want to say thank you to all of my council colleagues who stepped away from their desks, and so far I know that we have the Office of the State Representative Jim Roebuck represented. Thank you. My colleague, Councilwoman Janie Blackwell, who chairs City Council Committee on Education. Thank you, Janie. And we have the Office of Councilwoman Maria Quinones Sanchez, who's been able to join us. We have Councilwoman Helen Gim, who was responsible for a major piece of legislation for workers. And we have the Office of Councilman Alan Don represented, who stepped away. I did see you, right? Thank you very, very much. My name is Blondell Reynolds Brown, and close to 10 years ago, if you can believe that, a decade ago, my team and I worked diligently with a wide cross-section of stakeholders to change things significantly on the issue of lead and the poisoning of our city's children. It required collaboration for sure, a lot of listening, learning from me, and hearing from all sides all the time to arrive at a remedy and a solution that would enable us to do what I call push the elephant up the hill. The position of my staff, which was led by Julian Thompson and myself, was to seek, yay, Julian, where are you? Was to seek a win-win solution. I don't operate on winners, losers. For me, that's unproductive, and we're not about diminishing people, because everybody brings their perspective and their lens to the table. We were interested in a win-win solution. Today is a proud moment for our city, as this bill was the final action on a package of bills introduced in October 2018 to further protect children from the harmful effects of lead exposure. One package of bills 2011, another package of bills October 2018. Today, I'm pleased to announce that all 5 bills have been passed. Today, with Mayor Kenney's signature, Philadelphia will become the largest big city in the United States to require universal lead-safe certification in order to obtain a rental license. That requires a repeat. Philadelphia will become the largest big city in the United States to require universal lead-safe certification. And the operative word here is universal. That was also the wedge word, right? But we had to figure it out. Our effort to update the law on rental properties began in earnest June 2017 with the release of the final report by the Philadelphia Childhood Lead Poisoning Prevention Advisory Group. So we did not operate from the hip, but we sought to take a report where a lot of work had been done and use that report and the work of the advisory group as guideposts towards us crafting new legislation. That report recommended that we make lead certification a requirement across all rental properties. And I can say with a sense of pride, satisfaction, and applause that our mayor has been unapologetic about raising the bar when it comes to protecting our children. I would say, is my personal opinion, and we all have one, it took guts, what my mother calls gumption, and what I call moxie, for our mayor to find a sustainable means to support and fund pre-K for our children in this town. Bravo. This is yet another accomplishment that helps achieve our mayor's vision that children in this city should lead happy, healthy, safe lives. Please join me in welcoming our mayor, Jim Kenney.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. Today represents an incredible milestone in our efforts to ensure that every Philadelphian can live in safe, lead-free homes. Today would not have been possible without the hard work, dedication, and passion that Councilmember Reynolds Brown puts forth every day for our city. Please give her a round of applause. As we all know, she will soon leave her place in City Council, but she will surely leave behind an incredible legacy and really big heels to fill. We must also recognize Dr. Tom Farley, Commissioner of the Philadelphia Department of Public Health, Donna Cooper, Executive Director of PCCY, Ruth Ann Norton, CEO of Green and Healthy Homes Initiative, Rue Landau, Executive Director of the Philadelphia Housing Commission, Commissioner Dave Perry of License and Inspections, and our partner organizations like CLS, TURN, and the Public Interest Law Center. Thank you for all your hard work. Many of you took part in the Philadelphia Childhood Lead Poisoning Prevention Advisory Group, which our administration convened with Council to make this into a meaningful and practical piece of legislation. You attended community meetings, met with landlords to receive feedback, and got to work. All of you have been instrumental in the creation of this piece of legislation that not only protects children from lead, but also protects families and vulnerable populations from discriminatory rental practices. And all of you have been great advocates for our city's residents, especially our children who deserve to live in homes that are lead-free. Over 1,500 children were exposed to lead last year in Philadelphia. This is completely unacceptable, and it's up to all of us to make sure that our children are safe. We know that exposure to lead can damage the cardiovascular system and brain and also lead to problems with behavior and learning. Lead exposure can have permanent effects on people's lives, and we as a city must do better to make sure that lead exposure, which is preventable, doesn't affect another child. When this law goes into effect next October, Philadelphia will become the largest city in the United States to require universal lead certifications for people seeking rental licenses. For many years, we have worked to remediate properties where children have already been exposed to lead. With this new law, we will change our fundamental approach. From now on, our focus will be preventing children from being exposed to lead in the first place. For this work, landlords will have to test their properties and show that they are safe for children and pregnant women. We recognize that this will require some effort on the part of landlords, but this piece of legislation is an important step in our efforts to improve Philadelphia's housing stock and grow a safer, better, and more equitable city. So I want to thank you all again, especially Councilmember Brown, for your tremendous work. Now, please join me as we sign this bill into law.
So we're going to have a photo op. We want to ask all of our supporters who helped make this real to stand behind the mayor. I do want to acknowledge David Hyman, who had to leave, and then we're going to resume our programming. The mayor's demanding schedule. Absolutely. Shelley Yanoff, I would really appreciate it if you joined us up here.
Any other supporters that would like to be in the photo? Come on up, please. Any other supporters? Aaron, you want to come on up?
Provide for inspections and fees, and to revise definitions and to promote lead safety in all districts.
You're welcome. So we would be remiss not to give others who've been a major spokes of this wheel to make this reality happen this afternoon. And when you decide to take on a major piece of legislation, there has to be a city official or commissioner whom you have to become a partner with to make it real. The persistence of our Commissioner of Public Health, Dr. Thomas Farley, is a large spoke in the wheel of why we're able to have this experience this afternoon. And I want Dr. Farley to share with you additional information on the transition period that will occur over the next 3 years. So with that, Dr. Farley, you're up.
Thank you all for being here. Before I get into implementation, just a couple of thoughts. This really is a big day for our history of combating lead poisoning. This is something which has been with us for over a century, and we've been dealing with it for about 50 years. And until now, our primary way of dealing with this has been what we would call secondary prevention. That is to say, we learn of a child who has elevated lead levels, then we go into the home to remediate the property to prevent further exposure. And we need to continue to do that, but that's not the best way of solving the problem. Our children shouldn't be the canary in the coal mine. Primary prevention makes much more sense, preventing children from being exposed in the first place. That's what this law does. It changes our fundamental approach to addressing lead poisoning in Philadelphia. With this, we hope that no child gets lead exposure in the first place. We don't have to address any high lead levels in the future. That's what our goal is. So it is a great day. Now let me talk a little bit about implementation. This bill is going to be, this requirement is going to be phased in over 2 years according to the zip code of the residents of the apartment. The zip codes were divided into 4 groups according to the percent of children with lead levels above 5 during a 3-year period. The map here shows the phase-in. The zip codes that have the highest percentage of children with elevated lead levels will go first. Those are 11 zip codes, and that requirement will take effect October 1st, 2020. So that is to say, any rental property that has its license renewed from October 1st, 2020 to March 31st, 2021, in this darkest green zip code here, will have to show evidence of a lead-safe or lead-free certificate to be renewed during that time period. Then the next 6 months, from April 1st, 2021 through September 30th, 2021, it'll be the next zone of 11 zip codes, a slightly less darker green. And on for another 6-month period for the 3rd zone, and then the lowest prevalence zone will go last. So that means over that 2-year period, every property in the city of Philadelphia will have had to have a certificate that shows it's lead safe or lead free. We will have achieved universal coverage. Between now and October 1st of 2020 is when we will be communicating to landlords more details about how this rule is going to be implemented. Right now, if people go to phila.gov/health, there's a link there that can give some basic information and the zip codes listed here as well as a map. But more information will be forthcoming, and we're going to make real efforts to do outreach to landlords to give them more details. That's all I have to say. Thanks very much.
We had a great team of professionals that helped make this effort real, and I want to acknowledge our city's champion for fairness and equity in housing, who has a tremendous track record dealing with and confronting the discriminatory impact of this legislation, period. So we would be remiss not to honor the leader, Rue Landau, our commissioner for... Stand up. Very good. Thank you, Rue Landau. We learned in the implementation of the 2011 bill that there were some holes and gaps in the legislation, and it was the work of her office that provided us with the needed evidence for us to retackle this issue again. No one group or individual gets to wave the banner. Let me repeat that. No one group or individual gets to wave the banner. This is not a me thing. It was a we thing. So for those folks who want to wave the banner, not, unless you're pulling everyone that was on the team, say nothing. This is really a we effort. And one of our biggest and greatest champions for this is an attorney with Community Legal Services who has been working on this issue for 50 years. I mean, his heart, soul, and guts was in this all the way up this road. He started at Community Legal Services as a Reginald Smith Fellow in 1970, focused on housing landlord-tenant issues. He so cares about this issue, and he was a real trumpet player as we went down this road. Let's hear from George Gould of Community Legal Services. You're welcome.
I'm very excited to be here for this wonderful occasion, the signing of Bill number 180936, which makes important changes to the Lead Safe Certification Ordinance. I'd like to thank Councilwoman Blondell Reynolds-Brown and her staff, especially Julian Thompson, for their dedication and persistence in getting this bill passed by City Council with a unanimous vote by council members in support of the bill. This happened despite the efforts by the Property Owners Association to defeat the bill. We worked with the councilwoman to get past the original bill, which was amended to require lead-safe certifications. We are all well aware of the serious problems lead can cause. Even small amounts of lead can cause learning behavior problems, slow growth, and development issues. The original lead-safe bill it was amended to only require a lead-safe certification for tenants who had a child 6 years or older or younger living in the property. However, it became clear that this was not working. Only a small percentage of landlords were complying. In addition, the health department had no way of knowing where children 6 years old or under reside. Moreover, the ordinance was discriminatory because it led landlords not to rent to families with children. This was shown clearly in an article about the Massachusetts lead law, which was similar to Philadelphia. In addition, there was also the problem of families with children visiting relatives and friends where there was no lead-safe certification required. The passage of this bill, which most importantly requires lead-safe certification for all rental properties, is a landmark achievement. In order for a landlord to get a rental license from L&I, a system is being developed to ensure there is a valid lead-safe certification on file with the health department. The lead-safe certification will be valid for only 4 years when a new one will have to be obtained by the landlord. The health department will also publish annually a list of all properties for which a lead-safe certification was provided by the department. I would be remiss if I did not mention the tremendous work of PCCY staff, Donna Cooper, Colleen McCauley, and all the other members of the Red Fee Coalition, including some folks for Baltimore with the Green and Healthy initiatives who were very involved and very helpful in getting the bill passed. Finally, I would also thank the Health Commissioner, Thomas Farley, and the L&I Commissioner, David Perry, for their strong support of the legislation. Today is a day we all should be proud to live in Philadelphia. Thank you.
Thank you, George. In 2003, during my second term, I had the good fortune to be selected by Mayor John F. Street to become a Robert Wood Johnson Fellow. And the beauty of that experience for 4 years was that I got a chance to travel to major cities across the country to see how systems were performing for children. Another great benefit of that experience was always looking at best practices and comparing Philadelphia with other municipalities to see where we rank, and meeting other professionals who are tackling the issues much like you. Following a telephone call with Donna Cooper, we learned that, we meaning Julian and I, learned that Baltimore, Maryland was way ahead of us in having figured out how to tackle this problem. And so we went to Baltimore. And we sat and we listened to our next speaker and her team of professionals because they, for us, represented true visionaries on this issue of lead poisoning. She comes to us as president and CEO of Green and Healthy Homes Initiative. She is a national leader where municipalities around the country call on her expertise and her experience to teach us how we can figure out and get this done. So I'm thrilled that we're able to have up from Baltimore Ruth Ann Norton, who is the CEO of Green and Healthy Homes, to provide a few remarks. Thank you so very much, Ruth, for everything. Thank you.
Councilwoman, thank you. Commissioner Farley, thank you. Mayor Kenney, wherever you may be, thank you for this. It is Lead Poisoning Prevention Awareness Week in the United States. And over 200 years ago, Ben Franklin warned us of the ills of lead and its impact, so it's very good to be in Philadelphia on this particular day to celebrate the start of what will be real work to protect and lift the futures of Philadelphia's children. The largest municipality in the country to pass comprehensive lead poisoning prevention laws and regulations, which will take a partnership of the amazing, amazing advocates that you have in George and Donna and Rue and all of the groups here that really deserve such congratulations for their work. But it will also take the efforts and the partnership of the rental property owners, all of whom I may be out of the room now, but on the record, these are the partners that we need moving forward, that we need to lift up, we need to hold accountable together in this. And that partnership has worked well for us in Baltimore, where we have lowered lead poisoning rates by 99%, returned $44.5 billion back to our economy, but most of all, lifted the futures of Baltimore's kids. And I have a commitment from the Councilwoman that Philadelphia will beat Baltimore to 100%. So we want to say to all of you, those who will be implementing this, Commissioner and the Councilwoman, even after retirement, we will be here to help support the work of the whole city in this, to ensure that we care deeply about Philadelphia's children. I would be remiss to not point out my key partner in this, Kate Klinger, lives in Philadelphia, so thank you, Kate, for all of your work. And on our staff, nationally, the largest geographic birthplace is Philadelphia, so we have a real tie there, by the way. But as I close, because you've heard so much about the implementation of this law, it will take a lot of education, a lot of engagement. It will take all of us to keep that moving to ensure that this happens. We have to support the health department and the advocacy work to advance it. But what it will translate to mean is that Philadelphia kids will get to the classroom healthier and better able to compete, not only for grade level reading, but in the future in earning and learning and thriving. Long-term health of Philadelphia, its housing stock, its economic mobility, its anti-displacement efforts, the health of its affordability is a linchpin based in this law. So congratulations on the great vision, the great work that it takes to do this, and the courage and grit. And we will be watching and standing by ready to help when you need us. Thank you.
I would be remiss not to acknowledge also Commissioner Perry and his team at the Department of Licenses and Inspections. They too listened to the challenges faced by this effort and sat down with us on July 24th when I made the decision, quite frankly, with some unhappiness by others. It was time for all of us to come back to the table. Not to talk past each other and not to do the whisper down the lane, but for all of us to come back to the table and talk with each other to figure out where there were still opportunities for us to close the gaps. That was an exceedingly important meeting. The other members of the Lead-Free Philly Coalition that I did not hear were the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, the Overbrook Environmental Center, who's here, and I thank you for being here, the National Nurse-Led Care Coalition, which is a collection of doctors, pediatricians, certifiers, and remediators, all who care very, 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 very much about this issue. All teams have champions and, superstars or five-star professionals, and under the leadership of Donna Cooper, Colleen McCauley was on the front line in the trench advocate. And she's not able to be with us, but we need to acknowledge her work and her stick-to-itiveness in a very, very kind way. She's a very tireless advocate on this issue. Addressing this ugly issue of lead started with a partnership back in 2010, 9 years ago, under the compassionate leadership of a woman I adore and want to acknowledge, because while I am not retiring, I'm just stepping into another space, but I'm not retiring, for the record. You got that? But I'm trying to seize as many moments as I can to say thank you to people and professionals and advocates and champions where we've shared philosophically a lens on how we're going to help children. And this may be the only chance I get to salute this woman in a magnificent way and let you know how much I have appreciated you. Shelley Yanoff, please stand up. And all of us get the chance to have a bench, right? All of us get a chance to make a decision on who we're going to pass the baton to, right? Hello? So for all of us leaders that have been occupying a spot for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, figure out who you're going to pass the baton to. We did that very successfully in room 581. I'll save that for another day. PCCY is now led by a fearless champion for children and families. Her tenacity is legendary, and thousands of children have benefited and will continue to benefit because of her wisdom, her savviness, and I can say this, she's a bully, but I say that with love. She's also a firecracker, and I respect her a lot. Donna Cooper.
I'm the kind of bully you want on your team, right? So, first of all, Colleen McCulley, tall, strawberry blonde, nurse in real life, could not be here today because she's in Delaware County chairing the Delaware County Lead-Free Coalition there, and tomorrow we'll be in Montgomery County doing the same. So this work goes on, and I so wish Colleen could be here for this opportunity. A few weeks ago, they found 11,000 kids were poisoned by lead in New York City when they did an uptick in their testing, 11,500 and something to be sure. And if our testing was higher, we would know that those numbers would not be very far from here. We're not testing enough kids, but as Dr. Farley said, today we're getting ahead of the testing problem, and we're getting the lead out of the homes. And when we began to follow up on the great work that Councilwoman Blondell Reynolds Brown and Shelley and George and others did in 2011 and 2012, we listened to Jenna, we listened to Avril, we listened to Aisha, all mothers of children who were poisoned by lead. And one of those mothers, Aisha, said to City Council, "I will never know the full capacity of my children." And that's something no mother, no father should ever have to say. And so we want to always thank the parents who put their personal lives aside to be at council testimony, to be at press conferences, to talk to reporters, to invite reporters into their home. And in fact, one of the reporters is here, thank you for covering this story, who actually covered the extraordinary experience of a woman on an 11th Street corridor who was poisoned in PHA. And this bill, unlike the 2012 bill, captures public housing. And that is a major advancement. And this bill, unlike the prior bill, says if you want a rental license in Philadelphia, we're going to have a level playing field. Good landlords and bad landlords will be treated the same. Good landlords, thousands of whom were complying with the law, will now know that their colleagues will either not get a rental license or they too will spend the money for an inspection and remediation. We are creating a level playing field that is fair for landlords. And we had landlords who spoke out in favor of this bill. And we had painters and the Painters Union who spoke out in favor of this bill. And we had lead testing certifiers who spoke out in favor of this bill, and their stories of what they saw in homes in Philadelphia motivated us. And so in addition to the amazing partners that Colleen had in that coalition, St. Christopher's was front line on this work. The parents were front lines in this work, and the nurses, and the Clean Air Council, and the Sustainable Business Network, you name it, people who were willing to put children ahead of profit were there with us for the fight for this bill. So, Councilwoman, there was a giant coalition behind you, supporting you. Dr. Farley, Commissioner Perry, also there supporting you. But we could not have done this were it not for two people who had the courage to run for office and put kids first. Jim Kenney, creating a childhood lead task force. And that lead task force set the level playing field for our conversation, right? And then we got informed by the great work that Rue did. But Jim Kenney ran for office, and he put kids first. Now, he probably learned how to do that from Councilwoman Blondell Reynolds Brown, because she's been in office a lot longer than him. And like Jim Kenney stepping forward and doing this, he was supported by Jim Engler, who in that time was in the policy job and really did tremendous work to support that task force. And Councilwoman, you were supported by Julian. And Julian, where did he go? Oh, Julian. He had a lot of phone calls. I would call him, and then Paul would call him, and then I would call him, and the other Paul would call him. And those Pauls were from the real estate sector, right? So they were opposite conversations pretty much every 10 minutes, every day. But in fact, at the end of the day, this bill is a good bill for landlords. This bill is a good bill for neighborhood businesses that are cleaning up our homes. This bill is a good bill for parents. This bill is a godsend to children. And this bill would not have been possible if Councilwoman Blondell Reynolds Brown hadn't made it her champion cause. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you. 3 closing points. I learned well from David L. Cohen, former chief of staff for former Mayor Ed Rendell, that when you're in a dispute, you must always, always, always keep talking. You must always keep talking, even when it's uncomfortable and especially when it's inconvenient. And so I found it exceedingly important to keep talking to the very community that had a major, major role in us helping to face this problem. And Julian and I reckoned last June with the fact that we were not going to find common ground, but we needed to make sure there was some common understanding and what the roles were for all of us. And so I want to acknowledge, even though they have left, members of the landlord community, their staffers may still be here, HAPCO, including Victor Pinkney, Paul Badger, Harvey Spear, and Paul Cohen, and then Marilyn Orlando, Brianna Westbrooks, and Sean Raleigh of the Apartment Association. We kept talking, even though I recognized that common ground was no longer a possibility. Lastly, we're proud that my office, we did really lobby the mayor and President Clark for a few pennies, right, to be included in the budget for the cost of remediation. Yes, that was hard to do, but we were able to get that done, and it will make a difference. The good news, however, is that there's even more funding that's available. As a result of us attending that conference last February, just last month, we learned that the city of Lancaster received over, listen up, $9 million in funding to help the remediation of their properties. $9 million. A federal grant known as the Lead Hazard Reduction Grant from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. So I'm going to lean on the health commissioner, and I'm going to lean on our L&I commissioner for us to go after those dollars. Because if we're all serious about singing from the same sheet of music and changing this paradigm when it comes to lead poisoning, then all of us have to do our part to go after those dollars that move us in that direction. So I need to put that on the record because it's there and we need to know it's there. Lastly, I'll share with you that it is no secret that on January 21 of this year, I formally announced that I wanted to do something else. And after 5 consecutive successful elections, I had chose not to run for a 6th consecutive term. Napoleon Bonaparte, I did a lot of soul searching and self-reflection before I arrived at that decision this past January, and read a number of books over. And one of those books I read was this quote that really captured the space I was in, and that is, "Nothing is more difficult and therefore more precious than to be able to decide." So I decided that while there's no perfect time to choose to do other things, is the right time for me. Because I really do not want to get to the end of my career, and I certainly don't want to get to the end of my life and only have lived the length of it. I really want to have lived the width of it as well. And doing that requires us to take leaps, even though we may not know what tomorrow holds. My mother's expression was, "While I do not know what tomorrow holds, I know who holds tomorrow." So I'm going to lean on that, and I suspect that with the work that we've done, I'll be able to continue to do this work, but in another space. So I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you for the opportunity to work on an issue that really gnawed at our gut, and now we just have to cross our fingers, toes, and eyes that the Health Commissioner and the L&I Commissioner will do all they can do in the transition and the implementation of this bill so that we can actually get it right second time around. Thank you very, very much. All righty. Yes. So let's do a final picture. Oh, everybody. All righty. So let's stand in the front. Is that okay?